during Dr. Jane Goodall's visit to Singapore then. And ever since that first lecture, we've brought primate researchers from around the world to Singapore to share their knowledge and insight on various primate species with us. And we're continuing to do that this year, despite the fact that we've had to move our lectures online, and also our speakers will now be joining us virtually. And today we're very excited to have Dr. Anthony Collins joining us from Gombe Stream Research Centre in Tanzania. Many of you know 2020 is a very special year to all of us at Jane Goodall Institute because it marks the 60th anniversary of the day Dr. Goodall first stepped foot in Tanzania to begin her chimpanzee research. And Dr. Collins will tell us more about the history of Gombe Stream Research Centre and its contribution to primate research, and of course his very own findings from years of studying the olive baboon. But before we begin, I like to take care of a few housekeeping items. First, in order to minimize distraction and conserve bandwidth, may we ask all the audience to mute your microphones and turn off your cameras. Secondly, please do note that today's session will be recorded and the recording will be publicly available later on. And thirdly, please use the chat box to send us questions that you have for Dr. Collins and to share your comments with the audience. But please be mindful and polite and civil. Okay, now that we've got that taken care of, and like I mentioned, please mute yourselves for the time being. Now that we've gotten that taken care of, I'd like to invite Miss Esther An, who is the Chief Sustainability Officer of City Developments Limited, to say a few words. CDL, together with its Singapore Sustainability Academy, are the supporting partners of the 2020 JGIS Primate Lecture Series. Esther, please join us.
Yes. Good morning, everybody, and welcome, to those who signed in from overseas. At CDL, we are a developer. We have been committed to conserving as we construct since 1995, and this has been our ethos, not just for our product design and all that, but also community engagement and outreach. And last year, we were very happy to have partnered Jane Goodall Institute Singapore to have hosted Dr. Jane herself, the legendary, wonderful, is my idol, I have actually contributed so much to conserving, not just about chimpanzee and, but also the conservation of our natural world, the forest and all that. That has a huge impact on humankind as well. And I think we also believe in actually partnership. We believe that partnership will help us to, amplify our voices and also impact. And we're very, very happy and look forward to more partnership with JGIS and to support conservation work. And we are very, very excited to, listen to some of the exciting, African tales from Dr. David Collins. And well, thank you and look forward to listening to your story. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. And we appreciate CDL and SSA's support. Okay, next up, I'd like to bring in Dr. Andy Ang, JGIS president and lover of all primates, especially the Raffles banded langur. Andy will be telling us a little bit more about JGIS and what we do. Andy, are you there?
Yes. Thank you so much, Carmen. Thanks, Esther and CDL, for the strong support to our programs. Let me share my screen. So I'd just like to share a little bit about the JGIS programs. As all of you know, we are a local chapter of the Jane Goodall Institute that was set up by Dr. Jane Goodall in 1977. And so the local chapter was set up in 2007. We believe that every individual can make a positive difference. And so our programs focus on inspiring people to take action for the environment, the community, and wildlife. There are three main areas of focus in our programs. So first up is the Roots and Shoots. It is a global youth outreach program that's now in 110 countries, including Singapore. It is mainly student-led, where the students come up with their own projects which can benefit the three main areas, the environment, animals, and community. And so we have workshops to support students to learn more about what they can do, and also support programs for teachers so that they can help the students design their projects. And we also have events that bring the community of the roots and shoots together. In Singapore, we have 3 species of non-human primates. So Carmen mentioned the Raffles-banded langurs, which are critically endangered in Singapore. We also have the long-tailed macaques, which often come into contact with people, and so there might be some human-wildlife conflicts that we need to try to resolve. And we also have the Sunda slow loris, that is a night-active primate. Most of us would not really have a chance to see unless we go out for night surveys. And so at JGIS, we focus on the 2 primate species, the long-tailed macaques and the Raffles-banded langurs. So we bring the public out for our regular monkey walks, which we can't actually do now due to COVID. We're hoping to start again in phase 3. We also have monkey guards where volunteers are trained to deter monkeys from urban areas like residential areas and back into the forest. And we also have the citizen science program where we train volunteers, including many of you here, to go out to nature reserves to collect data on our Raffles-banded langurs. And for the no feeding campaign, it was actually launched end of last year when Dr. Jane Goodall was in Singapore. And the main aim of this no feeding campaign is to encourage people not to feed wildlife, including macaques, so that the animals would not be reliant on people for food and they can go back to the forest to get natural food resources. And we also have our events committee where we conduct lecture series like today's lecture with Dr. Collins. And we also have outreach programs where we share knowledge about our environment and wildlife to people so that they can learn more on what they can do. So if you're interested to find out more about the Jane Goodall Institute in Singapore, you can follow us on our social media, and also contact us if you want to be volunteers. We are a charity organization, and so we depend a lot on volunteers and funding. So you can also donate to us in Give Asia. So that's all I have, Carmen.
Thank you, Andy. Yes, so as Andy said, if you're interested in supporting us, please do get in touch. And now let's move on to our main event. And here to introduce our speaker is my JGIS colleague, Dr. Vilma Di Rosario. Vilma, off to you.
Thanks, Carmen. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. And we are indeed honored to have Dr. Anthony Collins here with us, calling in from Tanzania. Anthony, welcome to Singapore. And in the last couple of weeks, Carmen and I had the pleasure of chatting with Anthony, and we found out that in the late 1950s, Anthony came to Singapore during his summer school holidays. And he remembers swimming pools, which are still there, and he remembers wildlife in Bukit Timah Hill and Singapore Botanic Gardens. We'll leave him to talk more about that later. Dr. Anthony Collins is the director of Baboon Research at the Gombe Stream Research Centre, the very same centre that Dr. Jane did her study on chimps. He has been living in Gombe for 33 years and studying baboons, and his research spans such a long time, a longitudinal study. It's the longest study on baboons in the world. So living so close to the forest and doing work in the forest has its ups and downs. One of the downs is that you can catch malaria, and Dr. Collins says that he has caught malaria 2 to 3 times each year. And indeed, he caught malaria last weekend. So we are so grateful to Dr. Collins for his perseverance. He really wanted to get well today to be with us. So thanks so much, Anthony. And ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Anthony Collins to give us his talk. Anthony, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Vilma, for welcoming. And I hope you can hear me. I'd like to say Good morning or good afternoon to all of you. Here it's still early morning, about 8:15. I will need to open a presentation to show you. As Vilma said, I have very good memories of Singapore when I was young. And as she mentioned, going up and down the Bukit Timah Hill with my brother and my mother was a very wonderful part of that. This is my first slide. I don't know whether you can see it.
Anthony, no, not yet.
Oh,
not yet. Mm-hmm.
That's my fault. I'm coming back shortly. Where? There we go. Share screen. Sorry for the delay. I'm technically a challenged person, having lived here for so long.
We see this. We see the slides.
Okay, let's start then. Get that thing up there. Slideshow on. I've got a lot of slides. I do apologize, but I'll go through quite quickly, and hopefully there'll be time in questions for anything which was confusing. This is a map of Africa, and what you can see, it's a vegetation map, and what this area here, the green area in the middle, is basically the tropical rainforest part of Africa, corresponding like to Southeast Asia Malaysian forest. There is a rift valley running down here, separating to the drier East Africa here. And here is Lake Tanganyika, which is a very deep Rift Valley lake. And Gombe, which is where I am now, where Jane started her study, is exactly here. I hope you can see where the cursor is. So basically, we're on the edge of the tropical rainforest area, where it grades into being savanna and drier places. So it's a very species-rich area. This is what it looks like. You've got an escarpment and grassland more high up, but lower down you've got very rich forest, and right by the lake shore there's abundant water all the year. And this is conserved by Tanzanian government as a national park. This is the place where in what, 60 years and 15 days ago approximately, this young woman, Jane Goodall, first set foot on the beach. And her mission, sent by Professor Louis Leakey, was to study wild chimpanzees, because nobody really knew anything much about them. And because of her great talents and dedication and strength, she found out a lot of things about chimps in a very short time, which made her very famous, made Gombe very famous, and made chimps very famous and better understood. The study, as you said, has been going on for 60 years, and you can't do anything for 60 years without a lot of help. And nearly all the work is done by local people. These are people from local villages, and many of them don't speak English. We speak Swahili all the time. And this is Jane with some of our sponsors from the US and Europe, and our team, which is actually currently 45 people whom I respect very much. This is just a picture of a view from the rift escarpment looking down. That's Lake Tanganyika below you. The horizon at the far left, this is Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. If you go here to the right, this is Burundi. And both of these countries have warfare. And so refugees and illegal immigrants have been a conservation problem, which I'll come to. But basically, to show these trees is to show you that although the chimpanzee research is like the mainstream of Jane's work here, I'm going to be talking about several branches which have come off her work. As you know, many other branches have come subsequently, but the strong origin is the chimpanzee program, and I'm going to talk about 3 branches. One of them is my work, the baboon study. Another one will be the community conservation work, which is called the TACARE program. And the last one will be roots and shoots, which is more familiar to you. Of course, chimpanzees were made famous because they use tools and they make tools, which people thought animals didn't do. They also hunt and eat meat. They have lifelong relationships within the family. They're very intelligent, and there's a lot of politics and social intelligence in their minds. I'm not going to say anything about that because Deus came to talk to you last year. I was jealous, but I'll just mention 2 things which justify. People say, why are you still researching chimps after 60 years? Surely 20 was enough, or 30. But the truth is that we're always learning new things. Don't worry about the details, but this is just to make the point that one of the very unexpected things that came up in about 1999 was that the chimpanzees in Gombe harbor a virus, which is exactly the progenitor of HIV. They have their own immune deficiency virus. People didn't know where HIV came from. They thought maybe it was chimps, but they weren't sure because they were all kind of corrupted chimps living in medical labs, and they could have picked it up anyhow. But when it was found to be free living in Gombe, then the world more or less tipped over and said, okay, it's a chimpanzee virus. And the ones which caused pandemic HIV came from the red dots in the middle of the picture, which is like around Congo, Kinshasa area. So that's something, anything can come out of your research if you go on and do it well. And now we have the responsibility to study who gets it, who gives it to who among the chimps, and what harm does it do. Another thing, 60 years of life histories. This is a totally amazing picture of the family tree of the most famous chimp of all, Flo, is the most famous mother. You can see her own children, the first line, then her daughter Fifi's children, the second line, then her granddaughters, Fanny and Floss's children, the third line, and then down to the great-grandchildren at the bottom. And we recently calculated, Flo has left 58 descendants in her life, of whom 25 are still alive. So she's made a huge impact on the chimpanzee community here. Now, forgive me, that's all I'm going to say about chimps unless you ask me, because I want to move on to branch number 1, which is baboons. You can see here, chimpanzee on the left, playing very happily with a baboon on the right. There are other non-human primates around us at Gombe. This one might look a bit familiar to you. If you look closely, it looks like this. It's a red colobus monkey. So you would say this one is the counterpart of your Raffles banded langur. And these are very, very numerous in Gombe, and they live in big groups. On the other hand, you've got some forest monkeys. They're called guenos. This is a red-tailed monkey. There are blue monkeys and hybrids and everything. And they're in the same family as the baboons and the macaques. Then we have these ones, which are olive baboons, which is my subject of study. And I think you would say, compared to your long-tailed macaques, which you have, their counterpart here would be the whole group of baboons and the red-tailed monkeys and blue monkeys, because they have these cheek pouches. They don't eat leaves like the langurs and the colobus do, and they're mainly, they eat a lot of fruit. This is really what I'm going to talk about during this first part of our meeting. So the study started in 1967. I was lucky. I wanted to study chimps like everybody, but they said, no, but you can do baboons. So I joined that in 72. And the baboons here live right by the lake shore. It's a very expanding population, and it's a fortunate habitat because half the year there's rain. You can see here even 2 water spouts on this huge lake, and 5 months of the year it's dry like it is now. It'll be dry now until October. You can't do a study of 230 baboons without having people to help you. We've got 6 field assistants here, and they're collecting here fecal samples for DNA to assist a visiting researcher. That lady, she's from Japan, very nice lady. This just shows the area we work in. You can see the lake at the bottom, and then there is these valleys coming down to the lake, which are full of darker forest. Intervening areas, you've got more grassy woodland, and on the uplands, there's woodland there. And if I just take the cursor, where I am now is just here at the bottom right. This is where the research center and Jane Goodall's camp and the National Parks camp is. So the olive baboons, this is an adult male. These are bigger than your long-tail macaques. They weigh about 23, 25 kilos, and they're very, very impressive, especially in their prime of life. They have these very long muzzles, which I think your macaques don't. These help them to open very hard fruits and so forth. They give a lot of leverage, and they've got very strong cheek teeth for chewing as well. They have cheek pouches to carry their food around as well. The females are about half that size, so it's a very bad news to be born a female baboon because the males dominate you all the time. And this is a very famous female. She lived to be 27 years old. She's called Utah. And this child on her back is about 10 to 12 months old. So I'll just quickly tell you something about being a female baboon, and then we'll come on to other aspects. When they're 5 or 6, female baboons start to have menstrual cycles. And for better or for worse, when you have the middle of your menstrual cycle, you have a big swelling on the what is called the sex skin, the rear of the body, and I'll show you that now. And it can be very conspicuous of long distance. And what that does to the males is it makes them want her. So it encourages competition between males at the right time of the month. And if the males are fighting well, then the one who finally gets to implant his pregnancy will be a strong male. By attracting competition, she weeds out the weak guys, which is an automatic, very sensible method. Usually males pay no attention to females and they just ask them to groom them all the time. But when the female has a swelling like this, the male doggedly follows her everywhere and is very nice to her and grooms her and goes everywhere she goes. Here you can see she wants to go into our baboon office, and the male's just hanging there patiently alongside, hoping nothing's going to go wrong and nothing's going to pop out and scare her off. Once she's pregnant, for some reason, I don't know if macaques do this, but there's a very bright red color at the rear, which is what they call the pregnancy sign. We don't really know what is the advantage to be showing that you're pregnant, unless perhaps it inhibits aggression. There are studies going on to know about that, but it's very obvious, and they're really helpful to us because we're following their reproductive cycles, and you can tell in a flash, oh, this one's pregnant, which is very helpful. For chimpanzees, we have to do pregnancy tests for urine, which is much harder. Anyway, after 6 months pregnancy, a baby will be born. These babies, when they're born, they're pink or white skin and black fur, which is a very conspicuous signal, which gives them protected status. So if you annoy one of these small babies, you're going to be in trouble. You want to do, they all come around and mob you, and you want to go, beam me up, Scotty, get me out of here, because it's pretty nasty. And the mothers are very attentive to look after their infants. You can see here, very sweet creatures, but very fragile. When they get to be about 2 to 3 months age, they start to wander away from the mother. And if the mother's not a careful mother, this is when infant mortality goes up. So between like 3 months and 9 months, 1 year is a very dangerous time for these young babies. And infant mortality is like 15% for first children, goes down to about 10% for the mature, careful mothers. Very rarely, like twice in 53 years, we've had twins born, and we're very excited. At the moment, we've got 2 of them in one of the groups, and we're watching them every day, and it's a huge issue here. Everybody's going, how are the twins, how are the twins, and how is the mother coping? The mother is coping because she's a high-ranking female, and the other females don't hassle her much. But if she was a low ranker, she would have a terrible time, because all females are very interested in other females' babies, and she would just be at the mercy of everybody coming and pulling at her babies and interrupting everything. But she's calm, confident, fat and sassy, and she looks good, and we're very hopeful she may well succeed. The previous pair of twins we had in the 1990s, one of them died. With chimps, it's the same. Mostly they don't survive. One of them dies, or both. Anyway, later, the infant's skin turns to brown color, the fur, just like the adults, and the mother again has to be very attentive to look after the kids, and they continue to suckle them up to 1 year, 14 months. And when suckling drops off after a year, the mother goes back into having menstrual cycles and being ready to mate again. So on average, they have a baby every 2 years. If it's a fast mother, she can do in 18 months. Those in bad condition, maybe 3.5 years between babies. The thing which holds the families together is this, grooming, a lot of grooming. And here you've got the mother grooming her elder child, and then the younger child is grooming the mother. And you can really see family care concentrated together by grooming in this way. Of course, it cleans the fur, but it makes everybody feel happy and relaxed. You can tell it's very nice. And this means that grooming is used as a social tool. So apart from family grooming, there's like non-family social grooming. They groom up rank, like low-ranking females will groom the high-ranking females, and females will groom males whom they're attracted to. Males will groom females to keep them close by, or to show the other males, this is my girl, as it were. You know, like you put your arm around to say, she's mine. The baboon version of that is grooming the female and looking a bit grumpy of the males around. So anyway, on the whole, you learn that the families travel together. The group can be big, even 70 animals. But if you recognize one family member, you look around, you find most of the others are there close by as well. So they tend to move together. If one of them gets in trouble, the other ones rush to help. And it can be very noisy and chasing back and forth. But on the whole, the family unit within the big group is still very important. And the females have a very strict social hierarchy. It's not at all a socialist society. A female who's born to the high-ranking mother gets high rank. A female born to the lowest ranking mother, she's stuck at the bottom of the hierarchy for her life, and makes a big difference because high rankers breed faster, the children survive more, they grow faster, and everything is good at the top and pretty tough down at the bottom. After they start to grow larger, we enter the juvenile phase from 2 to about 5 years. This is a juvenile, and the good thing about being a juvenile is they're very curious and they're learning a lot, and what they're doing especially is playing. If you see, you get these big play groups of kids around the same age, and they're just continually chasing, rushing about. And honestly, you think to be a happy creature on the planet would be very nice to be a juvenile baboon at Gombe for most of the day. They're just playing continually. They play in the water. Sometimes they even swim. They go underwater and then they dash out and ambush their comrades on the beach. And both play and swimming, you find males do it more than daughters do. Males have a tendency to move away from the mother more. Females have the tendency to stay closer to mum, which makes a lot of sense. It makes sense because later in life, those males are going to transfer out of the group, because the group is basically a whole lot of females who are broadly speaking related to each other, and all their sons emigrate. So all the males who are breeding males are immigrants from outside the group. This is more play going on. This is the veranda of Jane Goodall's house, actually. And what is nice about this is that when they're playing, they're learning. They're learning kind of what to do, like social behaviors, not just grooming, but all kinds of aggression, submission, alliance, and so forth. They're learning what to do, when, and who to do it to, or not. And they learn a lot by their mistakes during this rather innocent time of life when the stakes are not high. So they're very curious. I love their eyes, and you can really see they're really thinking. They're very intelligent creatures. I would say they're street smart. I don't know how they compare with your macaques, but busy minds, and they're always watching and seeing what we are doing. As I said, Ramel, as he grows older, spends more time. What the trouble he runs into is that in the play groups, he gets too big, and he's always hurting the other ones by mistake, and so he's getting chased out. So there's a kind of lonely misfit period which a male has. When the kids won't play with him, the females whom he's attracted to are all his relatives and won't give him the time of day. So he spends a lot of time on the edge of the group. And this guy is sitting on the beach, and they're often scanning north and south to look at other groups to see how many females are there, good females are there, to try to immigrate and join those groups. As you can see, the males are equipped with very fine canine teeth, they're like leopard's teeth, they can cause a lot of damage. And for a male who leaves his own group, he's got to go into the neighboring group where the females are interested to have him to come in, but the males definitely don't want to see him. So it's a very difficult learning time of life, and he's got to be very careful not to alienate the males and not to be chased out by all of them together, not to be mobbed, not to hurt any of the females, not to hurt any of the babies. And the key thing to survive and do well is just basically to be cool. If they can remain, as it were, remain cool under fire, then the others become scared of them in the end, and they find their way in, then they can become ambitious and work their way up the male hierarchy. But if they're panicky, cowardly kind, they're likely to be chased out. It's really amazing, some of the events you see, these guys surrounded by 3 or 4 males threatening with their teeth like that, and the guys are sitting there pretending he's thinking of something else. It's really outstanding. Their main foods are fruits. Chimpanzees eat ripe fruits, mainly. Baboons and the other monkeys, like the long-tailed macaque analogs, they can digest unripe fruits as well, so they're quite strong competitors for the chimps. But ripe fruit is the main thing they're targeting. And there are many species available through them at different weeks during the year. I think the counterparts in Malaysia, if you look in the top right there, there's a figs. We've got something like 16 different kinds of figs. in Gombe. In fact, there's so many we don't really figure which is which. It's very complicated. There's also a fruit called msalasi, which is Garcinia, which is the same genus as mangosteen. So I think there are a lot of fruit analogues here probably for your fruits in Singapore. Fruits don't keep you going all day, and they're often a lot of water and slush, but not very much protein. So baboons eat all kind of other things, especially leaf shoots, buds, flowers, seeds, bark, sometimes tree roots. But a very good thing they concentrate on a lot is insects. And what you see here is a female capitalizing on the fact that the termites are flying. It's actually just started nightfall. She should be in bed in the tree, roosting in her tree, but in fact she's come down with her baby to catch these termites as they're flying, because it's a very, very good nutritious source, because these termites are full of fat and protein to start their new lives. It's a very, very good food to seek. And they spend hours even looking for small, small insects like this time of year during the dry season when food is scarce. One thing they do in Gombe, very strange, they're licking stones on the beach a lot. And we figure they're getting some very minor levels of nutrient from the splash water at the edge of the lake. And we're not quite sure whether this means mineral deficiency, but they really love this little salty taste. And sometimes I ask the baboon guys, what are the baboons eating at the moment? They said, there's nothing much really, only stones, which is an interesting reply. But it's one of the benefits of living by the lakeside. You can see here more of it going on. Now, a little bit about mortality. As I said, female baboon can live 20, 25, 27 years. Males burn out earlier. They tend to start dying, aging when they're 17, 18 to 20. They just live faster and die younger. But there are a number of, within Gombe, the population is really increasing. The birth rate is high, but it's limited by quite a lot of death, which we also see. This infant, his mother died yesterday, and he's going to refuge with an adult male to protect him. And I'm pretty sure this baby, there's no way he could have survived, because they don't really adopt. The only one who may adopt is a mother who's lost her baby yesterday as well. She may pick up this one and carry on. We've had 1 or 2 cases of that. But generally speaking, mother dies, you die. Some babies are born dead. You see here 2 sisters. One of them is lucky. Her baby's alive. The other one, little baby on the left, was born dead. So the bereaved mother is interested in her sister's baby. Quite a lot of wounding. Deaths are caused by wounds. We don't always see who wounds who. But for example, this juvenile, he died after a bite wound. But what is nice here, you can see his juvenile companions are showing a lot of sympathy and grooming him and licking his wound and so forth. We had another case of this only yesterday. It's rather moving to see that they take care of their injured companions. Now, we go on to predation as a cause of death. What are the predators in Gombe? Well, there used to be leopards, but there are no more. There are eagles, quite a lot, and very occasionally they take baboons from the treetops, baby baboons, but we seldom see that. There are pythons, and some of them are very big, and we were astonished a few years ago to find that a python had eaten a whole adult male baboon, say 23 kilos of flesh. And when we went to see him, he was at the edge of the lake, he fled into the water. And if you're a snake with a full belly and a predator comes, the only way to escape is to regurgitate your meal. And so he regurgitated this poor baboon. But we were astonished to think that a python can eat anything so big as that. But we think the main predator of baboons is that young baboons are taken by chimpanzees. I apologize for this graph, but the gray part is deaths we didn't see. But the colored part is deaths we saw or knew what they were about. And the red part and the orange, which is 1/4 of the quadrant, is deaths attributable to chimpanzees. And if the ones unseen is the same, it means that half the kids who die are killed by chimps. I don't have a picture of catching a baboon, but some chimps are very, very strong hunters. And you see one here catching one of the colobus babies. Sorry to show you that. Just to run through the lifetime relations between baboons and chimps. If you're born a baboon, you start off being a prey for chimps. They may eat you. When you get older, the juveniles of the baboons are quite often a refuge for play for juvenile chimps. Juvenile chimp is walking around with his mother. There's nobody to play with most of the time because she's just feeding and moving around with her baby. So when they run into baboons, they rush into the play group and join together. So you have some very nice scenes of baboons and chimps playing together for a while. But that's like the age of innocence, because once they become adults, baboons are fierce competitors for the chimps' main foods. Chimps are eating ripe fruit, baboons are eating even unripe before it's ready. Also, baboons outnumber chimpanzees to a huge extent. We figure there are about 30 baboons for every chimp here. And so they get the food first, they get it when it's not ripe. In forgiveness, you can say that both of them, in their dung, are dispersing the seeds of their shared fruits. And chimpanzees in their dung, baboons in their dung, also in their cheek pouches, which they have for stored food on the move. You can see seeds from the forest way up on the top of the hill. You can see species from the hilltop, their seeds way down in the forest. So basically, they're all giving their fruits a huge chance to disperse. And I do believe they've caused a huge amount of regeneration of forests within Gombe in the last 60 years. I kind of think that the chimps and baboons, they're farming their habitat without knowing. Anyway, old age and disease are a bit hard to separate. We know a little bit about the diseases of baboons. This female, I think she actually had schistosoma, which is bilharzia, which she caught from the lake. So she died a bit early. When they die, we collect their bones because it seems gruesome. We dig them up, we bury them and dig them up, because these bones are very valuable for anthropologists and medical biologists, because you can see the bones of a dead animal somewhere, anywhere, but what can you say? But these ones, we know how old they were when they died. We know a lot of their life histories. We know even their medical histories, when they were ill, when they had injuries like this. And a lot of biological anthropologists want to come here and study our collection. And it's not, we have a lot of baboons, but also chimpanzee bones. Some of those human evolution people are very keen on the chimp collection. It's like a new line of research which is building. Now, as I said, baboons live in groups, which is mainly related to females. And when groups grow very big, you get a lot of competition within the group, and those females among themselves decide to split. So you get the troop divides. I don't really know whether in the botanic gardens, the macaques have any space to do this, growing and dividing to this level. But when they divide, the 1/3 of the group who are kicked out get forced to go uphill onto the uphill habitat areas. And the winners, like the big group, maintain the better food on the lower habitats. This is just an aerial view. This shows our research center is here. And these are the year ranges of different groups. This is the one who's down by the village area. These are normal ones along by the beach, by the lake shore. And this one, and then this one, were forced uphill. Being forced uphill turns out to be a very bad thing, because if we look at how those different groups get on over the years, how their breeding goes, I apologize, this is a histogram, but anyway, I just want to show you that each group, if you look at the ones on the right here, blue is the number of males, orange number of females, and gray the number of immatures. And these two groups here are forced uphill. You can see the groups are very small, and you can see even the one on the right even has, when it was sampled there, it had even no youngsters. Their breeding was a total failure. So the uphill troops are having a hard time. The troops down by the lakeshore, which is this one and this one and this one, are like average. They're doing okay. They're not dwindling, they're not increasing. Now there's one group which always has monopolized the village area, and that group always does very well. They're twice the size of the other groups, they grow faster, they have kids younger, the kids survive better, and generally speaking, that's the very, very good life, is to be in the village with the people. The pretty good life is to be along the lakeshore, and the hard life is up the hill. The problem up the hill is, one of them, the habitat is not nearly so good. There's much less forest just down in the valley there, and much more grassland and woodland, which is less productive of food. But we've also found they've run into a problem of parasites. By feeding in the stream beds up there, they need their protein. They're actually freshwater crabs. And I really don't know about Singapore, but I believe worldwide, there is a disease called lung fluke, related to liver fluke, which affects the lungs and is like a debilitating disease which you catch by eating crabs. So although they're welcoming and enjoying the crabs, they're running into trouble. They tend to die early, their breathing fails, they're coughing, and they're losing weight. It's a very unexpected thing which happened. So being uphill has at least two problems about it. And we think those uphill groups may just die out. The ones down on the lakeshore are doing very well. There's very good forest. This is by the back of the beach. Many species here, and there's every advantage. There's a lot of food washed up on the beach. They can also get fish, or used to be able to get fish, which fishermen are catching, and they're drying them on the beaches. They're allowed to do that. And this is very valuable food, and the baboon is at a competitive advantage over the fisherman, because if this guy threatens you and wants to take your fish, you tend to give way and let him have his way. So a lot of extra protein was got that way. We always thought, I was studying a natural population of baboons, they've just got like a supplement of fish and it's okay. But the government outlawed the fishing nets the fishermen were using, and they all left. This was actually very good for conservation, but very bad for baboons. And females like this, she was like the top breeder, fast breeder, very healthy, highest ranking female. She has infants every 18 months, like clockwork. They grow well, they survive well. Suddenly we thought she's having trouble getting pregnant. She's had a miscarriage. Her reproductive menstrual cycle has gone wonky and everything. And later we realized that about half the females have been affected by losing this extra protein and fat of the fish which was given. After 3 or 4 years, they kind of recovered and readjusted to normal natural diet, which is good, but it was a very surprising thing we found about interaction between humans and baboons. Now, I'll talk about the baboons which live in the village. This is time for a quick digression. This is a satellite image of the main research area. So I'll quickly just say, when Jane started, she was here, and it wasn't really a forest like that. She had a tent here, and this is where there's famous stories of chimps coming into her tent to steal bananas, chimps coming every day, regulated to her camp, baboons coming, a lot of competition, mayhem, general busy life. The success of her study with chimps caused a complicated home life. So in the end, they had to shift everything, and she moved up to a place here where they could separate their life from feeding bananas to chimps and controlling their research a bit better. And her husband was a filmmaker, so they were up there. But after a while, they had a baby, and even chimpanzees can be a threat to a human baby. So in the end, they moved down to live in this house here on the beach, which is where their child spent all his time on the water. When I first met him when he was 4, and even his whole life, he's a addicted fisherman. He's just mother chimps, son fishing. The chance that the son would follow his mother into being a chimp researcher was completely lost at that point. He's actually not very happy with chimps. Finally, when her husband got money from filming, they moved to a house here. That was the veranda you saw earlier where the baboons were playing. And I'm very fortunate in life to be the housekeeper, because Jane is away for like 50 weeks of the year. So somebody has to take control, and I'm the lucky person who does that. Anyway, for the baboons, as I said, all cases when the group divides, the smaller group is forced uphill. When the camp group divided, the smaller group moved up to here. They were called D group. But there was a curious thing which happened, which is down here, the camp group, most of the females had sons. Whereas up here, the daughter group, the small group, there were a lot of adolescent females at the time of the troop split. And those females became adults, and they started to breed very well. This group grew in size, this group stayed stasis. So when this group was larger than the village group, they simply came down, and the females pushed and pushed and pushed the village group away. And they were banished to the south, way out of the picture, and have never been back. And they remain as a normal lakeside group. So having been like refugees up the hill, they came down, they took over the village area, and they've done very, very well ever since. You might say, thinking also about long-tailed macaques where you are, what's the advantage of being in the village? Well, obviously, There's a lot of food to be scavenged from trash pits. There's a lot of opportunities of theft. This baboon has just done a run on the food in a tourist boat, and he's now making his escape when we came near. This is Jane's house one day. On the inside, we found that many, many baboons had come in, and the wall to the window to the right here is the kitchen. This is the kitchen after those baboons had done their worst. Everything was tipped out and destroyed. What could be eaten was eaten. What could be broken was broken. And they ran up and down all over the house, spreading bits of food everywhere, defecating and generally making a wonderful mess. So you have to be very, very careful. And it underlines a point in relations between baboons and people, is you can take all precautions with the baboons, but you cannot train people. They always forget, and especially visitors. Baboons are also very ingenious. Males thieving generally involves with hitting doorways to see if they're open. Females have to use their intelligence a lot. And I just want to quickly show you, this is a doorway. There is a sliding bolt, which originally was on the outside out there. But female baboons learn to open that sliding bolt very easily. So the house owner, the homeowner, Baboon Research himself, moved the lock inside with this hole for his hand, and they just had to stick through here at first, but the baboon quickly learned to get out. So in the end, they had to make this kind of Chinese puzzle, this thing here, as a means for stopping the baboon easily opening it. But one of the females, one of the top thieves, she learned to wriggle this thing, and she's outside, and she can't see what she's doing with her hand, but she still learned to open this thing, and we couldn't figure how she learned, but we figured she must have learned simply by watching, by another angle, like over our left shoulder here, watching the house resident come in and out. And I want to say that the best thieves, the most intelligent thieves, are the females. And also to say that the child of a thief is a thief. Like within the group, you have some lineages who are really good thieves and some who just pursue a normal, innocent life. It's very interesting. Anyway, hooray for baboon study. This is the end we've done 52 years, and the data is very much waiting for me to get on with analyzing it. Now, the second branch I want to talk about is community conservation. I'm running badly out of time. I'm going to have to go very fast now. Jane noticed that while the forest inside Gombe, you can see the national park outlined in green, is increasing, and all the land outside where there used to be chimps, degradation was going on. Here you see deforestation on a huge scale, because these are all fishing villages along the lake, and there's huge population increase, and fishermen are fishermen and they're not farmers. They farm in ridiculous places. You get a lot of gully erosion so that the soil is lost, and even that soil goes and silts up the breeding grounds of the fish. So the farmers are, the farming fishermen are ruining their own fishing. So also when you ask people what to do about this, you can't ask them to limit their lives because they're very poor, these villages. There's almost nothing which they can do to reduce their consumption just because you say we have to conserve the environment. And so Dr. Jane and myself and a UN FAO worker who was very scared about the environment, and another American researcher, we sat and we prepared a grant proposal which was eventually successfully went to the EU for community-centered conservation, to enroll the community in preserving their land, on the logic that they can see they're damaging everything, but in the village land, it is their village, and they're leaving it to their children, they're leaving it to their grandchildren. And you say to them, look, the way things are going, what are your children going to get? What about your grandchildren? What about them? What are you going to do? Why not start working to preserve the natural resources which are yours? So you have a lot of community groups, environment committees, many long village meetings, planning what to do on different topics. And the TACARE model, sorry, that's Lake Tanganyika Catchment Reforestation Education Program, TACARE or Take Care. They opened a number of departments, one of them on community development to improve the livelihood of people. Family planning, because population increase is very, very high, and also many Burundian and Congolese refugees are flooding the land. Here you see one of our health workers going around consulting with women, advising them on their own reproductive health, to take care on HIV/AIDS, and giving them the opportunity of family planning. Family planning is contrary to local culture. Local culture says have a lot of kids. And slowly people are learning that maybe that has bad consequences. But it's very nice to work with people who work carefully in the village to explain the arguments. Women have a very hard life, and one way to help them is to give them wood burning stoves, very efficient, so that they reduce the amount of wood they need, the amount of hours they have to spend collecting firewood, and also reducing the amount of trees which are cut. Also reforestation and sustainable agriculture. For example, this woman has her own tree plantation in her house, and she's selling these seedlings to people who need them for their farmland or to protect their land. We have trees as shade trees over crops like coffee, so that the farmer benefits from coffee productivity. In the end, he can harvest the timber as well. And erosion by planting these lines of grass. This is a very deep-rooted grass, because there's no point for them in cutting terraces, like I know a lot happens in Indonesia, Southeast Asia, also in Kilimanjaro region, because this soil is poor quality and they don't even own it. So why should I dig terraces when it's not even my land and the soil is poor? Also, we helped them with agriculture. We devised a hybrid oil palm. Oil palm is the main cash crop on the lowlands, which is 6 times more productive than the one which they were using. And so that really increased their productivity of palm oil. This is not palm oil for export, this is palm oil for local use and for sale within Tanzania. And many, many, many people are involved in it. The other big cash crop is coffee in the slightly higher ground. And what was happening was that the coffee was really, really good quality, but the quality was lost in the marketing chain of Tanzania, and it was mixed with poor quality, and they got bad price. So we found them a good market for high quality coffee in the US and in Europe. We helped them to improve the intensity of their farming so that they got bang for the buck. And secondly, they did not destroy, shifting agriculture to destroy forests. They simply concentrated on the focus of land they had. Quality, very good. Sales, very good. And we're very happy. We had about 3,000, 4,000 farmers involved in that scheme, and they've all done very well. Also, to teach people to value the forest, natural forest products, to help them in harvesting honey, giving them new types of beehives. A big beehive gets more honey, and to help them find a market in the same way as we did for the coffee. And there you see a beehive in position. And also another forest product is actually medicinal plants. And nearly all Tanzanians use traditional medicine as well as hospital medicine, and they believe a lot in it, and there's a market, and the villagers value it very much. So to get them to value their forest, we brought them all together to share their secrets. They never share secrets, but we got them to share a proportion of them, and to see that it's really a way that they must preserve the forest in their village areas. How to do that? Well, we have a colleague in the US there, Lillian. He's actually Moldovan, and he's a satellite imagery expert. And Tanzanians have trouble with map reading. They're just not a lot of their schooling is poor, and they're not taught with maps. But if you show them a satellite image of their village, they know where they are. They say, this is my house. This is where my uncle lives. That's the road to the market. And they can think constructively how to plot out to use the village land which they have. And the result of that, it looks very crude, is a village land use plan, which we are now doing in all the villages. And the villagers know which area to conserve. And this area, the map here, this is the village forest reserve. I want to talk a bit about those. The areas they preserve as forest, they preserve those forest resources. We've just done honey and medicine. And there's another thing, but in the way the land was devised, there's a land use plan on the left. This is a map of Gombe National Park here, but basically it's a ridge of the escarpment of the rift. It's a ridge of mountains running all the way north into Burundi. And there are relic chimp populations in this area here. Our chimps are isolated, but it so happened that the way the land use plans are made, all these villages down here put their water catchment forests up in the mountain, because that's obviously, it maintains water supply all year, and it preserves and prevents erosion and so forth. So we had these isolated forest patches, we tried to reunite them, and now we've done that with village forest reserves. You can see this very nice chain. This, all the former chimpanzee habitat all the way to Burundi is now preserved by our jigsaw of village forest reserves. And we've started to get immigrant female chimps coming from up here down to refresh the genetic material within the Gombe population. So it's a very good conservation tool, wildlife corridor. And if you can do it through community-based conservation to help the people too, it's a win-win. That's the team, just to say thank them very much. And I mentioned the photographer at the bottom because some of his photos are so wonderful. And I lost a lot of time preparing this talk by getting lost looking at his lovely slides. The TACARE Project has an office in Kigoma, and they started on 12 villages, they went to then 25 villages, they went then to 52 villages, they went then to 74 villages. Now they've got 104 villages and still climbing, a huge area they work on, so that's their base. And if you come and see us, this is where we will receive you. The last branch I want to talk about is roots and shoots. And in Gombe 30, in about 1990, 1991, Jane Goodall and I were in Dar es Salaam going around schools, telling people about environment and teaching them all these things. And we met many young people who were concerned about the environment. And after the week was finished, some of them came to Jane's house, these 12 founding group, and they discussed what to do. And they decided to voluntary groups to work together for whatever concerns them most in their neighborhood. So these are the founders of Roots and Shoots, February 1991. And their priorities, I think you already know, every person makes a difference every day in what they do. If you act together, you can make a positive change where you are. And the priorities they decided upon for the environment itself, animals, and the human community. And later, when Jane started working in refugee camps around here, they started also the idea of peace initiatives, because we were working with many damaged refugees. So worldwide, peace is now an added element. And as you have in Singapore, we're harvesting the energy and the creativity and the flexibility of young people. And you can see in Tanzania, some of the schools are really quite bad, but Roots and Shoots is very popular, and it gives the children a lot of hope. And a lot of it in schools is tree planting, and Jane is kind of a pioneer, and she's always coming and having these ceremonial tree plantings, teaching people how to do it. Everybody loves it. It's very, very good for enthusiasm. And you can see here, the sign says, this tree was planted by Dr. Jane Goodall in June 2007. Happy, happy. They branch out into other areas. In the refugee camps, the problem is bushmeat. So the Roots and Shoots introduced a big problem of chicken rearing, which was a foreign concept to the Congolese there, and replace your poached meat with chicken and eggs. So that is another positive line with Roots and Shoots. So basically it shows Roots and Shoots is very adaptable. Whatever the problem is, wherever you are, you can figure out something positive to do. It's really a wonderful program. And I do believe that although Jane's first 30, 40 years here, chimpanzees was the main thing in her mind, I have to say that Roots and Shoots and the environment have taken over very, very well, and will continue, I think, to the end of her days. This is one of the recent very big tree nurseries Roots and Shoots is building around near to Gombe. And one of the things about Roots and Shoots is, as Jane says, you're supposed to have fun. The youth groups have fun. And she's a heroine, actually. And this is a group of Roots and Shoots scholarship girls in Zanzibar celebrating the arrival of their leader. Very nice. And as you can see, it's worldwide. We heard already from you that it's in 110 countries and growing, and Singapore is well on the map. So on this point, we'd like to leave you. Thank you very much. Wish Jane very well in her life as it goes ahead. Wish you all very well in what you're doing in Singapore. And from my side, I'd like a selfish farewell here. I'd like to say thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Anthony. That was a very, very informative session. And it's really interesting to hear you talk about the history of Gombe and your time with Dr. Jane. So that was very interesting. And for me personally, I think it's great to have learned a lot more about the often misunderstood baboon. I feel like maybe they've been somewhat vindicated a little bit. So there are many questions that have come in. So let's get right into the Q&A part of the webinar. Let's start off. Vilma, would you like to ask the first question for us, please?
Yes, Anthony, people want to know what are some challenges you face whilst you are doing field work on baboons?
Thank you. This is a very nice question. Doing the field work, we go into the forest every day. You saw the pictures that the hillside is very steep, and you also saw the picture that rainfall can be very heavy sometimes, and you also saw that the forest is getting thicker and thicker and thicker ever since Jane started here. So following baboons is hard work sometimes. To find them in the first place, even though there can be a lot of them nearby, you cannot see them. You rely on hearing them. And the research we do, we follow Jane's tradition to study individuals. So if you the method is you follow one individual for an hour or some hours or the whole day. And keeping track of one baboon through thick and thin, up and down the hills, through the forest, you find yourself in positions you never ever would have imagined, kind of hanging upside down in a vine thicket, figuring out how did I get here and how on earth am I going to get out and where's the baboon anyway, and worrying a bit about snakes and scorpions and so forth. So we behave in a very mad way, but I have to say that in these 60 years that people have been behaving madly in the forest, nobody has yet have died of snake bite, and on the whole, everything has gone very well. Although you have to be a bit tough, you have to have stamina and a sense of humor and patience as well. So the main challenge really is getting around and finding your subjects. Avoiding predators is not bad. The leopards are not here anymore. Most snakes, when you see them, they're running away from you already. In fact, we feel we're lucky if we've seen a snake, because we say, gosh, that's interesting, what was it? Rather than the other way around. And it's more a question of persistence and somehow staying fit and well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. Yeah, and like Vilma mentioned, earlier, that I guess one of the downsides is getting malaria. And obviously you've stayed very fit. You've fought off, I think you said 20 odd times contracting malaria. And yeah, so it's not easy. Now, moving on, we have a question here from Maggie Lim. Maggie wants to know, how does the weather in Gombe differ throughout the year? And does this affect the way that field work is being carried out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I may have mentioned that we have a wet season, which is about 7 months, and a very severe dry season of 5 months, which starts in June and goes through till October. And we're in the dry season now. So for our workers' point of view, in the wet season, you have to go with waterproof clothing. We have tropical downpours like you do in Singapore. It's just like Singapore in the rain section. Very, very, very heavy for like 1 hour, often with thunder and lightning. And when that happens, baboons just sit up in trees and huddle, try to keep warm and dry. Chimpanzees the same, they also just stay put. They do nothing much in the rain, although some of you know about chimps, there is a thing called a rain dance, which chimps do, but I'll pass by on that. And so you wait till the rain is finished, then you shake yourself off and carry on with your work. So in the wet season, there's that. It's often very, very humid. Your equipment, your clothes start to get moldy, and even, you get fungus and all kinds of things like that. So the wet season, you have to look after yourself. But on the other hand, wet season, you get much better fresh food and fruits and spinaches and leaf foods, and it has many benefits. And I really prefer the wet season, because when the sun shines, it really shines. And life really is buzzing. I mean, all the plants are growing, the insects are zooming around, the birds are eating the insects, everything is happening. It's really quite something. The dry season is actually the African winter. So right now we've got quite cooler nights. It's only hot by day when you're in the sun. and the air is very dry. So in terms of health, it's much healthier. All your problems dry out. If you have a cut, it dries out and heals quickly. The main problem then when you're going long walk in the forest is thirst, but it's easy to carry water with you. As far as the creatures are concerned, it's tricky because in the wet season, everybody's eating fruit. So you know where the fruit trees are, and you go to those trees and you find that the baboons are there already, or the chimps are coming, or the monkeys are there. And I consider the trees as the fruit, they're kind of like hotels, because the fruiting season of a tree is maybe 2 weeks or 5 weeks or 6. And when the tree's in fruit, I'm sure it's like the figs in Singapore, the birds and all the other feeders are there every day. But then the season is gone and the fruit is finished. And I kind of think, okay, this hotel is now closed. They'll be going to eat in another one. You can call them restaurants if you like. So in the wet season, there are a lot of those eating places. You can track them and you can move around and you can find the animals, and the chimps move in a big group, and the baboons also can stick together. In the dry season, like now, there's periods of like 2 or 3 weeks when there's almost no food. The chimpanzees are having a very bad time at the moment. There's almost nothing proper to eat. For that point of view, they separate to their minimal family units, and the males in 1s and 2s only, and they remain silent, and they may be traveling long distances or going to far places for their food, which is difficult for the researchers, because if you lose track of your group, then you're in trouble. But what is extraordinary for the chimps' point of view, when it gets really bad, they don't even bother to travel around looking for food. It's like they go, well, there's no food over there, so what's the point in looking? They just spend a lot of time resting, conserving energy, drinking, sleeping, eating whatever is nearby until the bad time has gone. For baboons, they're not so bad because they can detoxify plant toxins much better than chimps can. Chimps have a delicate stomach like we do, but baboons can eat all kinds of stuff which you and I would find unpalatable or would mess up our digestive system. So they're rather better, and they can stick together through the bad times rather more easily than the chimps can.
Thank you, Anthony. Let's see, Vilma, do you have another question for Anthony?
Yes, there are several questions. People want to know what would be a memorable personal experience you have encountered when with a baboon?
Well, many, but the thing which I liked best, I learned a lot from, was I mentioned that a male, when he becomes adult, has to transfer. He has to leave his mother's group and he has to find his way into another group where there are nice females he might want to breed with, but there are very resistant males who don't want him to come in. And when I first came here, I was delegated to keep track of one such male. So every day, all day, I followed him. It was really fantastic to see how he did his tactics of trying to get into the group. Like he would have bad days when the males would kick him out, and he would have good days when he would be able to catch one of the males on their own, and he would be kind of needling them, because what he wants is to be feared, but he doesn't want to have to fight about it. So he used a system whereby he would move towards the alpha male, who was a very tough guy and big, and then the alpha male would move towards him and make him go away. So he would go away, but he would come back again quite soon. The male would shift him away again. He would go away tactfully, but he would come back again. And he just went on persistently, bugging the face of the alpha male, of like always being there to unsettle him. So the alpha male is kind of beginning to go, who is that guy, you know? Why is he everywhere I go? And after a while, the alpha male resorted to using a baby as a kind of hostage. Sometimes these males, you know, there's babies with their black fur, they have protected status. Well, if a male carries one of those, then other males won't dare to attack him because they know he'll fight fiercely to defend that delicate young baby. So the alpha male started to resort to holding this baby every day. And when we saw that, we could tell that our young immigrant had finally gotten to start to break the nerve of the alpha male. And over a period of about 3 or 4 months, he finally did it. And he finally managed to isolate the alpha male on his own, the baby's not around, and start to be able to make him avoid and chase him away. So it was just really a thing of like psychological warfare, which really taught me a lot about what is on inside the baboon's mind.
That is a fascinating story. Yeah. Wow. Okay, let's see here. Okay, here's a question. How do you track the baboons that you study?
Well, I didn't mention properly. We started off with two groups. There was an inland group and a lakeside group. And the lakeside group did so well that they grew and divided and grew and divided and grew and divided. Over these 52 years, the one lakeside group gave birth, as it were, by group division to 8 other groups. So we tried to keep track of them because we're studying individuals in the original group, and we try to keep track of the families as they divide and separate into the other daughter groups, and that which thrive or die out, depending. And so your first step is to find your group, and each group has a preferred area, which is where it sleeps at night. They sleep in tall trees, safe from leopards and so forth. And then they use that as a basis, the central point for ranging out during the day to look for food. But no area is sacrosanct. So at the sleeping site, the core area of this group, during the middle of the day, the neighboring group may pass through looking for food, or even another group in the afternoon. So no place is sacrosanct, owned by one group. So if you go to a place, you won't necessarily find the group you want, but the probability is high. Okay, now within the group, there can be maybe as few as 7, but actually our biggest group now has got like 85 baboons in it. And our staff, I showed you a picture of 2 of the field workers, they recognize the whole group. They have to recognize all of them, and they do a kind of attendance record or roll call every day, like who is there, who is missing, who is ill, who is injured, who is pregnant, who's had a baby, who has lost their baby, which male is mating with which female. And there's just a general state of the world picture of each baboon group 3 or 4 times a week. And so that's what they do. So if on the other hand, you're following a particular individual in the manner of Jane Goodall, then you've got to recognize who all those baboons are. I said in a normal group, you might have 30 or 40. You have to learn their names and learn their relationships, their dominance ranks. You have to find the one you want. And then, as I said, try to follow it through thick and thin for the number of hours you need. So you can locate the group by roughly where they're likely to be, or where the food is at the moment in that area. And then you have to find your target and select the target, and then through thick or thin, stick with them through the day.
I see. So in other words, you do not rely on any type of collaring or GPS tracking like what researchers do with other species of wildlife then?
Thank you. This brings to one of Jane's main ideological policies. Jane says no interference or minimal interference. Many times people have suggested we should try putting collars on or marking them or putting even implants, radio accessible implants under the skin and so forth. But we absolutely won't do that. If it involves immobilizing the animal with a dart gun, an anesthetic or something like that, we won't do that. We will only do that if there's an injury or illness which we think we can help with. But in terms of tracking them, we don't do it. We respect people do that. If you're tracking elephants in Botswana, which may travel hundreds of miles, it makes pretty good sense, or lions or whatever. But here, the baboon groups and even the chimp communities are within a sufficiently small enough area that we're going to find them sooner or later. And we figure that we should not disturb them any further than they already are disturbed by us.
I see. Thank you. Vilma, another question from you?
Yes, we have a few young people who are listening in, and they want to know if you have any advice, Anthony, for them, because they're very interested in studying wildlife conservation. Any advice for the young?
Right, this is very good. Well, for Jane, speaking for Jane, I would say the first thing is to join your local Roots and Shoots group, okay? So you're working on environmental and conservational issues as far as you can where you are. Secondly, it depends really on what your talents. Are you a mathematical mind, or are you an artistic, or are you a writer, or are you into kind of science technology stuff? And secondly, it depends what is available to you in the courses where you are, which are like within reach, like within Singapore, or within the world, whatever is your, as it were, your range of, your outreach range. So for conservation work, it's very good to have a background either in environmental subjects, like the combination of geography and biology is it's not a very good one for employment, but in terms of conservation science, it's a very good combination because you're looking at human activities in the world and basic biology and population of animals and so forth. Otherwise, straight biology, chemistry, physics, those things are also good. There are a limited number of good conservation courses which I know about in Britain and in Europe. I think in America there are probably a lot in their universities, but I do not know within Singapore what is available. So if there are some things which are not immediately good, you just have to optimize your choice. Take a choice which is leaning towards the direction you want to go in. So I can only say, just be open-minded and be creative. And as Jane would say, follow your dreams.
Good advice.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. There are a few questions that came in through the chat, and they're quite interesting. What makes, in your opinion, what makes baboon so special compared to other primates? And what is your favorite trait of baboons and why?
Nice question. Well, first of all, I would say baboons are not special in relation to other primates. All primates are special. Even human primates are special. But the baboon has been much studied because I think you would say the macaques have the same things going for them, because they're on the ground a high proportion of the time. Compared to, I'm sure your langurs spend much more time up in the treetops, and that simply makes them hard to study. If you're studying them, you're wandering around looking upwards all the time, you have a crick in your neck, the langur is silhouetted against the sky, it's difficult to tell who it is, and so forth. Whereas if you're working with creatures on the ground, as the chimpanzees are mostly here, the baboons, and I'm sure many macaques, they're wandering around, you can see them easily, and you can see what's going on, and their whole social life is played out on the open playing field, if you like. It's kind of very accessible in front of you. So for asking questions about behavior and intelligence of primates, these are the ones which kind of offer themselves to you most easily. Also, baboons are very adaptable. In Africa, they're in very, very many places. I mean, all the sub-Saharan Africa, from east in Guinea to west in Ethiopia, then coming down both sides, south of the rainforest, all the way down into Malawi, Angola, Mozambique, South Africa. Baboons are everywhere. They vary a lot. Their social systems vary a lot, and that's another thing which can be studied as well. So they're such a capable species that they're easily available, and they're doing many interesting things, and they're adapting to local specific environments. That is the first question. The second question is, what is it that I admire about them most? And very, very honestly, I have to say it's their opportunism. Now, people say the chimpanzee is the creature closest to humanity, and that is correct in every aspect except one, that they're not opportunists, they're conservative. We humans and we baboons, sorry, excuse me, Freudian slip there, and the baboons share opportunism to a very great degree. Baboons are opportunists, they're go-getters like we are. And that brings them always into conflict with people. Farmers don't like them, they're stealing crops, they're raiding shops, they're doing all kind of, they're stealing food from tourists' cars. They're always in our face doing something which is to their advantage, not ours. But I do respect that, because that's why they're so successful. and it is their intelligence. They're very bright, they're looking for an opportunity and they take it. Forgive me, that is what I admire about them.
Indeed, they've gotten themselves quite a reputation of being the cheeky ones. Okay, Vilma, another question?
Yes. Anthony, someone wants to know about the people of Gombe. What can we from Singapore learn from our friends in Gombe about how people can better cooperate with other people and with other species to live in harmony?
It's a very nice question, because we're studying primates, and it's true, we've learned a lot from the chimps, and you learn a lot from the baboons as well, because of their similarities to us, differences from us. And I have to say, if you go with chimps every day, visitors say, oh, they're just like us. And then the next day they say, it's more than I thought. And on the day 3, they say the same thing again. It's even more like us than I thought. And some people have been here a long time. Well, the field staff on chimps, they just view the chimps as their brothers. I mean, you know, they say they're our brothers. They know them well, they understand them well, they can figure out what they're going to do. So we have a lot of closeness to these primates. And that enables us here in Gombe, the few people in Gombe, to live well in harmony with them. We have trouble making our visitors live in harmony with them because tourists are always getting robbed of their food, or they're going too close to the chimps, or they're even bringing diseases to the chimps, which is a serious problem here in Gombe. The number of chimps is not increasing because of diseases brought by humans. And we're desperate to protect them from getting corona. Now, on the broader question of how to live in harmony with nature, I think we have to step outside Gombe, because the people in Gombe, it's like an artificial community. We are the researchers, there's a national park, rangers and guards who protect the park, and there are tourists, each of which is a kind of artificial society. And, but in the villages outside, which I mentioned where the TACARE program is, we have a lot of trouble because we know that they depend on their environment, but it's very hard to convince them or to show them that they also depend on their environment. And it's only when they've like overused their environment and there's a lot of erosion and the soil is all gone and the water supply is drying up in the dry season. They get flash floods in the wet season because they've cut down all the trees and the water just comes straight down. When they see the problems, then they say, oh gosh, we really messed up. We can start to improve. But it's kind of like backpedaling, trying to get back to where you were before. And that's what our TACARE program is trying to get them to do, the roots and shoots people as well. But the problem, it's an uphill struggle because population. People, despite our help with family planning, they're having more children, And some people reduce family size to 2 or to 3 or to 4 children, which is manageable. But others, the neighbors, we know one guy who's got 40 children. I know a man who's got he's got 110 grandchildren, for example. We didn't reach him in time, you know, and how his children are going to live in harmony with their environment, I have no idea. But we can only help them and try and give them ways ahead to preserve what they've got. And to point out that, at least to try to break the cycle that hunger today is what destroys the environment. Poverty forces them to act to get what they can now. And so for us to work on breaking poverty, making them to be prosperous, and helping them to limit birth size, and especially to have education for the girls, because the number of children a woman has here is inversely related to her level of education. Poorly educated have more children because there's nothing, what else can they do in life? So it's a real struggle. And your question is good, but we're still walking uphill and a long way to go.
Thank you. Thanks, Anthony. Carmen, do you have a question?
Yeah, we do. From here, from our audience here, there's a question about, first of all, how many species of baboons are there?
I'm glad you asked that because I missed it out. Baboons, all the time I was growing up and working here, we knew there were 5 species of baboons or 5 subspecies. The olive baboon we have here is a big range south of the Sahara. There's something called a Guinea baboon, which is in Senegal and Guinea, which is a very strange creature in its social life. At the east end of the Sahara, we've got the Hamadryas baboon in Ethiopia, which has got a very big mane, and they live in single male harems, and the males train the females to follow them everywhere. It's like highly male-dominated situation. As we go south, we've got our olive baboons. They live in much bigger groups, like here, with many males, many females. As we go further south, we get to the yellow baboons, which are like more adapted to dry habitats. They're more rangy. They've got longer legs, thinner bodies, longer tails, and looks like they're adapted to walking very long distance every day in hot sun. I don't know what their counterpart would be in the macaques. Then you go to South Africa, there's something called the chakma, which is a rather more bullish, chunky creature with more fur because it's cold. And the question is, are these different species? Because they hybridize, you could say they're subspecies, but because they look so different, I kind of prefer to think of them as separate species. What is really amazing is recently people have started talking about another species, which is very near here. It's just across the lake. I showed you a picture. You could see Congo on the other side of the lake. Over there in Congo, there's a kind of baboon which is smaller than the baboons here. There's less difference in size between the males and females, and people are just beginning to discover their social life is very different as well. It's like if you know chimpanzees, people knew about chimpanzees from Gombe and from the chimps everywhere. But then there's a creature called the bonobo or bonobo, which used to be called the pygmy chimp. And their social life is completely upside down compared to normal chimps. And that's very informative. And we figure that this new one in Congo is going to tell us a lot about the origins of the society, which we are used to.
Interesting, very interesting. I think we're still okay with time. So Vilma, any other question from your end?
Yes, we do. A question on COVID. Could you tell us a little bit about how COVID has affected people in Gombe, as well as the fears you might have about COVID affecting chimps, and what are you and your team doing about it?
Okay, well, thank you for the question. I'll start on the outside, moving in. On the outside, the effect of COVID is, in Tanzania, it is not much at all. It arrived in eastern Tanzania on the coast, in Dar es Salaam, the capital city, it is there. But in the nearest town to here, on the lakeside, we've only had 1 or 2 confirmed cases there, and those seem to have been kept under control. So although we were very scared for quite a while, since February and March, it seems for some reason, COVID looks like it's lost flying speed in Tanzania, and there's no local threat that we know of. The threat that we do have is tourists coming from the USA or wherever, because they can just fly in, and unless people are testing them on the way and observing their health, they are a threat to us and to the wildlife here. We don't know what degree of threat that is, because biologically, if you look at the immune systems, chimpanzee, the place where COVID enters the body, into the immune system, or wherever it is, I've forgotten, chimps and we are the same. But other monkeys like colobus monkeys, langurs, baboons, all the old world monkeys as they're called, they all have the same likely susceptibility to the virus. So in theory, we should be hearing reports that baboons or vervet monkeys in the coast have got COVID or whatever. But until now, it's something we don't really know much about. So we have to fear the worst, because chimps are diminishing. The ones in Gombe, it's a small population of under 100, which is a very small population to be worth conserving, quite frankly, compared to other places. And we have to assume they can get it. We don't know if it'll kill them all or kill none of them. But anyway, we have to assume the worst. So for the government, that's hard, because what protects the chimps here is the national parks rangers. National parks is funded by tourism. So as I may have mentioned earlier, their income has crashed completely. Tourism has almost stopped for 3 months on the run in the country, and they're having trouble paying their wages. They can't do ranger patrols. They can't do all the protecting they're supposed to be doing, which is a great shame. So if tourism comes back, it'll be a double-edged sword, because we say, great, the protection can go up, but the risk is also going up. For us, Jane's people here in Gombe on the research team, first of all, we thought, oh, we can't even go into the forest at all. We shouldn't be following the chimps. But later we said, we have to know how they are. Maybe they've caught it already. So you want to monitor their health. So we started following them from a distance. And the truth is that we've now resumed our normal research methods with fewer people. We've got a skeleton staff, about 1/3 of our normal staff, just to minimize the pool of people who might be infected, if you like, on site. And we're keeping a greater distance from the chimps. Now, to keep a distance from the baboons here is very hard. They don't care about anything. They'll come right up to you, some of them. And so we're just hoping for the best that baboons aren't going to get it. Mainly, we monitor our own health. We don't let our guys go into the forest if they're in any way unhealthy. If anybody's come from town, they have to wear a mask for at least a week, ideally 2 weeks, and we monitor their health a lot. The main cause of chimps declining here has been disease caught from people, which is respiratory disease. So all the safety regulations for chimps are built to prevent them catching respiratory diseases from humans. So the rules are in place already. Tourists have to keep 10 meters away. They have to wear masks. They can't stay with the chimps for longer than 1 hour. All those things, the rules are there. The thing is simply to impose them, because tourists are forgetful, they're eager, they've spent a lot of money, they say, oh, we can't see properly, can we go closer? Or, can we stay longer? Also the chimps don't know the rule. They can walk straight up. Some of them are so tame, they will break the rules and walk straight through a group of people, which is nice for the people, but it's risky for the chimps and they don't know. So we just have to make sure that the regulations are imposed. You'd say, we have regulations for respiratory disease, and COVID is a respiratory disease, perhaps more catchable than the others, we don't really know. But if the regulations are followed, fingers crossed, we'll be okay.
Thank you. Thanks for the answer. Carmen?
Yep. Yeah. So actually, one question just came in, and it follows very well with what you've just told us. Can you tell us more about diseases that humans and other primates share, in addition to the respiratory diseases that you mentioned?
Okay, this is very good because as you've seen in the slides, we're living very, very close to these primates. In our human living areas, baboons are there every day. In the village area you saw, chimpanzees pass through maybe once or twice a week. Sometimes if somebody has left some clothing hanging on the washing line or somewhere, the chimp will go and steal it. So there's a danger they can catch illnesses from our, let's say, dirty clothing or things which people have dropped. Baboons are more intrusive. They'll break into people's houses. They can be infected by our pathogens there. And certainly, I think nearly all the things which a chimp can get, we can get, and vice versa, except I think typhoid. But almost we have to assume everything is the same. Now, what can we be transmitting to the chimps and they to us? Mainly, we can be transmitting to them via, we think, the baboons, because baboons are in our camp every day. The most transmissible thing would be worm infections, because we used to have children in the camp. We no longer allow them, but for many years, there were babies wandering around on the ground, and you can't really control what babies are up to. So the chance of baboons being contaminated, or even chimps being contaminated with their dung, getting worm infections from people, is high. Conversely, small children like to eat clay and dust and put things in their mouths. So there's a danger of them catching worm infections from chimps and baboons. And we know very well, we can sample those infections in the primates from their fecal samples, and there's basically a very high overlap in kind of like the nematode worm infections which humans and baboons and chimps have. In terms of other smaller diseases, we don't really know. Chimps, some of them have died with like streptococcal infections. I guess those would count as respiratory. One thing which is clear, when we first came here, like in 1973, we sampled everybody, and there were no cases of what is called bilharzia or schistosoma, which people catch from water infected with snails of a particular type. I don't know whether in Singapore, Malaysia, that's a problem. I hope not. But anyway, it's a debilitating disease. It's a worm which gets into your system. At the beginning, there was none here. However, people are coming and going. And after 10 years, one of our staff came back from hospital with a chit saying he'd been infected with bilharzia. And we thought, where did he get it? And then when somebody did a study of the primate dung here and the worm infections, they found bilharzia has got into the baboons, which it wasn't there before. So we figured that some people coming and going had brought in bilharzia and the baboons had caught it. Luckily, we've never seen it in the chimps, but for some baboons, it was very debilitating. I showed you that poor female who was old and ill. That was bilharzia. So I think we traded that with baboons, and luckily, it's somehow self-limited. It's faded away, and it doesn't seem to be there anymore. There is an illness which baboons have, which is called treponema. Treponema is syphilis. Treponema causes a disease called yaws, which is like a debilitating decay of skin tissue and flesh tissue, which is common in people in Central Africa. It infects chimps and baboons in other places. We were really worried that once it broke out in baboons, it turns out it's kind of endemic in baboons and in vervet monkeys and in quite a few monkey family primates across Tanzania. But when they live at high population density, it starts to show and make a difference and be transmitted more freely. So we're really worried that chimps who are catching baby baboons and eating them are going to be infected themselves. But since 1988, monitoring the chimps who are hanging around with baboons and eating some of them, they have not got this disease. And we're still struggling to eliminate it from the baboons, but it's very hard, since sometimes they have asymptomatic cases, they're carrying, but they're not infected. The other thing which I mentioned was infecting baboon groups uphill is lung fluke, which you get from eating crabs. We've not had any cases of that in people, but worldwide it's a big tropical disease of people. So we have to watch out from that. But the short answer to your question, after a long answer, I'm sorry, is probably the main transmission will be worm infections by too much proximity between chimps and baboons and people, with possibly the baboons as a villain, as carrying from the people to the chimps.
I see. Vilma, another question?
Yes. Anthony, if you had one wish that could be granted, what would that be for baboons and baboon research going forward?
Thank you for a generous question. For baboons in general, I mean, baboons are all over Africa. For them, I would just wish that farmers would take a more charitable attitude to them and doing things like planting crops which baboons don't eat, and they won't come and destroy their crops. But the possibility of limiting friction between people and baboons seems to be, I mean, a difficult thing worldwide. Even in Gombe, we failed. As I said, you can't train people, and it's difficult to deter baboons because they're so wily and patient and clever. So I guess for baboons, I would just wish that people will not destroy their habitat. We'll keep some areas free from farmland. For the research here, what we need is, we need some, I want to educate some Tanzanian graduate students to become involved more in the research, because most of the fieldwork is done by people who've not been to university, some not even to high school. And we wanted to have some resident graduates who love baboons for their own sake. Because to say in Tanzania, oh, I work on baboons, it's like you work on vermin, you know? You work on an animal which is not respected. So for me as a Westerner, I don't mind, I can shrug that off. But for Tanzanian, you have to really be able to argue your way through to say why baboons are important and you have to work on them. So we need one or two people who are really sharp and have been through college and schooling on that. We've got one very good one at the moment. I have to say I love him because he's really asking very much inside questions about why did baboon do this, why did that happen, and so forth. He's really questioning inside the baboon's mind, and that is a rare chance. We will stick with that guy as far as we can. But in terms of research, the problem is in Gombe for Westerners or non-Tanzanians to come and here and do research. There is competition for space, and most people are going after chimps. But if we can have somebody do a baboon PhD on something interesting, then that would be good. And as I said, I saw you all those bones, so there's a lot of research to be done on disease and bones. There's a huge database sitting there as well.
That brings us nicely to a question that was asked via email. There is a question from Susanna Carvalho, and she has a shout out to you. She says hi. Anyway, Susanna asked a question: what advice would you give to those who are trying to start a long-term field sites and baboon research?
The first thing is find a place which is very far from human settlement and agriculture, unless you want to study human-primate interface interactions. Otherwise, be far away from people, because once you have to tame your baboons for observation and study, they're going to be tamed on the farmlands as well, which is going to get them into trouble. So try and find an area which is far from people. Ideally, it has some conservation status. It is a reserve of some kind, of forest reserve, or a national park, or something like that. Then, once you need to kind of look around at the different baboon groups and see what kind of places they're living and roughly where they're going through the year, because their range may change a bit through the year. They may spend all their time around the river in the dry season. They may go off into the hills in the wet season. There are things to try to anticipate there. Ideally, you want to somehow habituate them to your presence so they're not scared of you, because most sensible baboons are scared of people. And you can do that either by simply going and appearing before them every day, looking really boring, wearing the same clothes every day. If you're a woman, don't go to the saloon and change your hairstyle all the time. Don't wear dark glasses on and off all the time. Be a very constant image for them. And do things which are not threatening to them. Like Jane had a lot of trouble with the chimps. She could get close to them, but when they moved away and she followed them, they would become alarmed. They said, why is that thing following us? So there are kind of ways of keeping them under observation cautiously. But as I said, because of baboons' intelligence and adaptability, they're actually quite quick to become used to humans, to be habituated to humans, compared to chimps who are so conservative. I mean, if they can see you're not hassling them, you're not giving them any problem, you're not bringing them any benefits or any harm, then in the end, they will just take you as being a boring part of their environment, which is the way you want them to look at. You want to make sure that if you don't already live in that area, you want to make sure you bond very well with the local community so that they know what you're doing and you're not threatening to them in any way, or they're not suspicious of what you're doing. That means the local government as well. We in Tanzania have to ask permission from the government every year. I'm waiting now, I'm dangling on tenterhooks because my application has not yet been replied to. And I think in 5 days' time, my permit will expire. I'll become an illegal immigrant, or because of difficulty of getting permits. So you might want to find that some countries are easier in that way in welcoming research. Others are very strict. To get research permits in Tanzania is very expensive. My permit costs like $3,800 a year. And if I was only coming here for 1 month, it would still cost $3,800. So your choice of country is also a bit important. But otherwise, for research, just a quick baboons, to think about what are your questions, and to think intelligently, what have people done in other places? What are the things which need to be answered? What does this place offer an opportunity to answer more easily? So there are like local places where questions can be better sought.
Wow, good luck in your getting your permit renewed. Vilma, I think we can take 1 or 2 more questions. So would you like to ask the next one?
Yeah, I have one last question from my side. Anthony, what gives you hope?
I think in terms of hope, in terms of the way the world is headed, in terms of the environmental problems of the world and of climate change and of unexpected disease outbreaks and sometimes political climates unsympathetic to environmental issues. There's a lot to worry about at night. And I think it's very important not to worry all night. You have to just say, well, I did what I can today and tomorrow we'll start again. But you have to be strong. I think I'm kind of encouraged by Jane's belief in youth, because society or business or governments structure us to take certain positions and behave in certain ways and be to respond in predictable manner to what society depends on. But I think Jane is very right to focus on young people when they're still more flexible, they still haven't become channeled into a particular way of thinking by their job or by their employer or even by their schooling, to think outside the box, to think openly, and to realize that you can make a difference at a local level. Even if everybody makes a small local difference, then a big difference has been made every day. So that is our source of hope. The question is somehow to reach the people who are not sympathetic to thinking about the future very far, or to thinking about the well-being of others, not themselves, or to thinking about the environment itself. And those things are basically education. So environmental and humanitarian education are very important to us. I mean, some see science as the answer to everything, but science has taught us how to cope with problems, but science has also developed so that we plunder the world more efficiently than we did before. So a lot of things have like a double-edged sword, a two-face to them. So I guess the main thing is to always try to optimize every day the positive face.
Wow, very nicely said. I think, thank you. I think that's a good place for us to wrap up today's webinar. Thank you very much, Dr. Collins, for spending so much time with us today. I have enjoyed your presentation tremendously, and I think I can say the same for all of us here. Before we go, I'd like to thank CDL and SSA again as our supporting partners for this year's JGIS Primate Lecture Series. Take note, there will be 2 more webinars and we'll be announcing those in the upcoming months. So stay tuned, and thank you to all of you who joined us, and hope to see you next time. Bye.